Hello guys, welcome to the fiction series. Today we are gonna see, what if Naruto x Keqing x Lisa x Raiden Shogun? Part 2. If you want more awesome fanfiction like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So without wasting any time, let's get into the video. Naruto could feel her pain. It was everywhere, in the air, in his thoughts, in his head. For the first time since he'd gained the ability, he wished he wasn't able to sense negative emotions. It had always been such a useful ability before, downright essential even during the war. Not only did it allow him to ferret out friend from foe, but it had helped in a number of other ways, too many to count. More than once, he'd thanked Kurama for the gift. So many times it had saved his life. Now, it was going to get him killed. Just calm down. He held a hand out and nearly lost it as her weapon flicked out. I'm not your enemy. I don't even know who you are. You will. That vicious lance whipped itself at him with impossible force, howling for its head. His hand snapped up and slapped it aside, but that did nothing to stop the frost from forming on his palm. He spared it a black look and batted the snarling spear wielder aside. Away she went, tumbling across grass, only to right herself and lunge at him thrice as fast. Persistent little thing. On that, they were in agreement. He could barely think straight, much less focus. Because he felt it all. So much raw anger, wrath, pain. She was well past the point of no return. Her heart was ablaze, her very spirit set afire with wrath. Whatever those red ropes were, they must have been suppressing it. He could see why, see her sadness and sorrow like a living, palpable thing. A new emotion bloomed now, as he kicked her away. Fear. Fear was the path to darkness. Fear led to anger. Anger led to hate. Hate led to suffering. But he couldn't understand why she was suffering in the first place. What had he done? Will you at least tell me your name? Shunha. It was more a scream than a statement. She struck out at him and he retaliated in kind, skyward spines sang in his hand. Calamity Queller struck it head-on and created a shockwave, setting their spears to spark. Naruto grit his teeth and reached out with his free hand, grabbing a handful of her hair. A furious hiss pushed through Shunha's grit teeth, peaking now into a yelp as he whirled and flung her over his shoulder. Cool your head. For all her wrath, Shunha could not fly, much less react in time. Certainly not at the speed with which he'd thrown her. As such, she was utterly powerless to stop herself from smashing into the lake. She vanished beneath its glassy surface with nary a sound and barely a splash. A moment passed. Then another. Yet another. Naruto straightened, releasing a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. What got into her? He could feel Lisa and the others looking on from the sidelines, wanting to help him, needing to make sure he was all right. Paimon was already making angry Paimon noises as she raced his way. Razor? He heard Lisa call, be a dear and go get the knights, would you? I think Jean would like to have a word with our guest. Naruto didn't have a chance to hear the wild boy's response, because quite suddenly, Paimon was upon him. Who the heck was that? She skidded to a halt in the air before him, her face filling his vision. Paimon nearly had a heart attack just now. Are you all right? No, never mind. Let Paimon check. She darted around him in a heartbeat, inspecting him for any injuries. Finding none, she flitted back to glare dark daggers at him. I'm fine, Paimon. Wait, a crooked smile touched the corner of his mouth as he realizing something. Were you worried about me? Of course Paimon was worried. She stomped a foot in the air. That crazy crane lady was trying to kill you. Somehow, her excitable nature soothed Naruto's seething spirit. Pure child. Must protect. His hand zipped out to pat her head and for once, Paimon didn't try to escape. On the contrary, the little fairy leaned into his hand with a frustrated noise. Not a single excuse was given. It showed just how worried she was. On a whim, he dragged her into a quick hug. She didn't resist that either. A tiny sniffle reached his ears. Wait. Was she? You're not allowed to die, got it? A tiny hand pinched his cheek, unable to do any real damage. Who's gonna protect Paimon if you croak? Her emotions really were too pure. He read them like a book and understood her unspoken plea. Still, calling poor Paimon out on it would have embarrassed her, so he went a different route. You're like family to me. He let her go, grinning a little when it looked like she wanted to jump back into his chest. Or, well, the closest thing to family since I landed in this wild world. Well, would you look at that? She really could blush. Of course I'm gonna protect ya. Lisa cooed from the shore. Adorable. Wish I brought my camera. Wait. Paimon flailed her arms. Did you just say what Paimon thinks you said? Depends on what you thought I said. Poor girl. She really was far too easy to tease. Naruto whistled a jaunty tune and walked back to the lake. Hey! Wait for Paimon. Stay put. He turned to face her and held up a hand. I'll go fish her out. She's after me, not you. An awful crack echoed behind him. Paimon yelped. It was his only warning. Naruto whirled as a towering shadow fell over him to blot out the sun. Blue eyes pulsed green as his noses sang. Paimon squeaked and huddled behind him. Skyward spine swept up, bisecting a massive chunk of frozen ice that fell from the heavens. No, he realized as the giant halves hurtled by. Not from the heavens. It had been thrown. He spared a glance for the water, only to find a fractured sheet of ice there. I'm not done! Shinha stood atop it, sopping wet and snarling fit to burst, one arm still extended from her throat. Realization dawned as his gaze trailed across the once pristine surface. She'd frozen it solid. Not all of it, but enough to give her a pathway right back to him. Enough to freeze a portion of the lake and launch it at him like a missile. Under any other circumstance he might have admired her persistence, if here emotions weren't trying to drown him. Look, he raised a hand as she stalked back his way. This is all a big misunderstanding. Whatever I did, whatever you think I did, I apologize. Can't we let bygones be bygones? A thin mist of blue miasma trailed off her shoulders. Why were her eyes glowing crap? Repent with your life. She leaped at him, trying to deliver a flying dropkick to his head. He caught her by the ankle and dunked in the lake a second time. She came back up sputtering, faster this time. Yet more of the bay froze over. He sighed and moved to meet her, steel ringing against steel. She was fast, but he'd seen faster. Strong, but he'd fought stronger. It was only a matter of time until she slipped up. At this rate, he would have to wound her, or worse. And so he did what he'd done all his life. He endured. Shinha saw red. Red, all of it red. Every bit of it. Her thoughts swam in an ocean of red. Her soul drowned in a torrent of seething scarlet. Her emotions sank into a crimson abyss from which there was no escape. She could no sooner control herself than she could stop breathing. It just wasn't possible. Everything had flew out of her hands, like a crane on the wind, and she was powerless to rein herself in. Years of emotion, decades of restraint, all ruined in an instant. She hated it. No. Wait. That wasn't quite right. She hated more than that. She loathed the one responsible for this. The man who had burned away her red ropes, and with them, any hope of controlling herself ever again. The man who had the one thing she never had, the man who even now was batting her about like a child. Hate. Negative emotions clashed against one another in a vicious cycle, festering desires made manifest, an endless feedback loop that only grew strong with each passing moment. Perhaps, had her been given a chance to explain himself, had she not stumbled upon the scene, things might have been different. They might have discussed things like rational individuals. Rarak! She struck out at him, and his spear stopped her again. Blasted thing. The mere act of wielding it seemed to make him faster. Sparks flew as they clashed. Calamity Queller, her beloved weapon, drank in her rage and grew all the more powerful. She surged forward, polearm dancing in her grasp. He gave ground readily, never once letting her land a telling blow. His family cheered him on from the sidelines, and she wondered if she ought to hate them, too. It wasn't fair. Why did he have a family, when she had been denied hers? Why was he happy, when joy itself had forsaken her? Remember, little Shinha. Cloud Retainer's voice filled her mind, hearkening from a distant lesson. You must never lose yourself to your emotions. Should you do so, you'll become little more than a beast in human form. You must keep the red ropes on you at all times, even when you sleep. She couldn't. They were gone, and her control with them. She wasn't even sure she wanted to anymore. You are a cursed child. Father's words welled up, drowning her once more. Your life brings nothing but disaster to us all. I wish you were never born. Shinha missed a step and faltered. She clutched her head in her hands and grit her teeth against it, to no avail. Anger bubbled up, causing her to bite her lip until she tasted blood. The pain didn't help. It only served to exacerbate her misery. Master. Her vision blazed. Frost crept across the ground at her feet. She threw her head back and screamed. It's not fair. The words escaped her in a wail, the cry of a little girl trapped in a woman's body. You have all that power, and yet you're just fine. No anger. No urges. Nothing. Just as quickly her head snapped down to glare at him. And yet I was cast aside by my own father. Forgotten. Forsaken. Why? I'm sorry to hear that. Pity gleamed in the eyes of her most hated foe. You've had a rough life, haven't you? As she looked on aghast, he lowered his weapon. We don't have to fight. A hand rose, outstretched to her as no human ever had. Why don't we just sit down and talk this out, eh? No. Not that. Anything but that. It was those eyes. Those damned eyes. Don't look at me. Their spears clashed. Wind warred against ice, shards of deadly glass flying with every blow. Hold still and let me stab you. He parried with his right hand and slid back. Can't we talk about this? No. Is it because you're a god? She growled at him. Because I'm mortal? I hate it. All of it. Answer me. It's not fair. She struck again, hoarfrost blasting out from her spear. Naruto swayed out of its path. A shard of ice flashed by and slammed into the little red girl's shoulder. She cried out and recoiled, clutching at it. Just like that, Naruto the Archon went still. Terribly, horribly still. Focused on the fight as she was, lost in the eddying currents of her rage, Shinha paid it no mind. An accident. Nothing more. Why was she in the ground? Not on. In. Slammed down into it, nearly one with it. Reality reasserted itself with a start, and with it came sensation once more, followed by pain. Pain, as a snarling sphere smashed into her lower torso and slammed her down into the ground. Agony as she arched her back and coughed blood. Torment, when a booted foot stomped down, pinning her in place. Where was her spear? Where had it gone? That's enough. Her foe loomed over her, one hand poised to deliver a mortal blow. I've let you vent and tried not to hurt you. But don't you dare hurt the kids. They're mine. Clouds gathered high above, darkening what had, only a moment ago, been clear skies. Something in his chest glowed a deep verdant green, turning his eyes a most startling shade of jade. The wind sang with it, a loud and furious dirge that promised pain. Still, it howled. You think you can get away with that? No. Not here. As though a great were speaking with him. Through him. Back in the castle, Valen felt it. She lifted her head. Here it comes. The gnosis sang in Naruto's chest, echoing his scream. I won't let you get away with this. His eyes blazed with light. I won't let you. Jean peered out her window into the chaos below. It really was him. No matter what he said. Barbatos. No more games. He raised a glowing hand. And the heavens answered their master. The Tsaritsa felt it. No doubt every Archon had. The storm was stirred, his wrath awakened. She reclined upon her throne of ice and smiled softly, sadly to herself. And so it begins. Fall. Shinha didn't see Naruto move. There was no transition between one moment and the next. She was laying on the ground, the next she was airborne again. Wind lashed at her, shredding her defenses alongside her outfit, buckling her body, tearing cuts opening across her arms and shoulders. Just as quickly she was cast down, wasted and spent. Still, the storm did not abate. High above her the clouds began to shift and funnel, giving birth to twin tornadoes. Those terrible twisters touched down on either side of her to hem her in. Neither budged, held in check by his will alone. She looked up and found those awful green-blue eyes glaring down at her. Was this the power of an Archon? She'd heard the stories from her master, but to witness this power firsthand, to feel it carved into her body. Movement in her peripherals. A fist struck her cheek and hurtled her away. Trees burst before her back, which then struck the ground, carving a righteous furrow through the dirt. Sanity broke through for a blessed instant. Am I going to die? An awful sensation stirred in her. It felt like fear. It was all she could do to rise now, to prop herself up on her battered spear, face the maelstrom, and stand fast. Wind howled in her ears, threatening to deafen her. Tears stung at her eyes as she squinted at her foe. He wasn't smiling anymore. Somehow, that terrified her more than anything else. Chest heaving, she struggled upright. I will not yield. He didn't deign to answer. There was no need. His hand snapped out and glowed a sunny green. Shinha felt her vision twitch in her hair. Confusion broke through the haze of rage. Wait. No. He wouldn't. He couldn't. He could and he would. An eerie anemo symbol pulsed in his palm. With a keening white her vision ripped itself from her braid, destroying it in the process. Left undone, her pale tresses fluttered down her back. She scarcely noticed. A sudden surge of weakness drove her down to her knees, taking her elemental strength went with it. Her polearm felt heavy in her grasp, near impossible to lift. Her vision smacked into his open palm. So close. Yet so far. Huh. Here at last he looked down at it, nonplussed. Wonder if all Archons can do this. His words lit a spark of defiance in her. He already had so many things that she didn't. Now he took her vision too? Her curse weighed heavily on her shoulders. Fate was laughing at her. She could hear it. A thin line of blood ran down her forehead and into her right eye, staining her world scarlet once more. Back. Those glowing eyes beheld her. No. She lunged at him with a shriek. Give it back! He moved to meet her, raising the twin tornadoes with a hand. Time slowed in her mind's eye. Death. This was death. She was going to die here and now. Shinha shrieked her fury, screaming at him until the rage became something else, threatening to morph into a sob. Stop! A flash of red caught Shinha's eye and her body betrayed her. Her feet physically dug into the ground, bringing her up short. Likewise, Naruto the Archon stopped short of unleashing his attack. Glowing green eyes ebbed back to blue as he looked down at the responsible party. Klee? No more fighting. Though her right arm bled, Shinha watched the girl's left hand clench into a fist. Families don't fight. Fighting is bad. Say you're sorry. Both of you. Shinha's throat closed. Family? Enough of that. Naruto choked out. You're bleeding. Come here and let me heal you. The blonde knelt and touched a hand to her injury. It healed at his touch, and the little girl gave a happy chirp. Then her eyes narrowed upon Shinha. Auntie. She physically flinched. Excuse me? You're an auntie now. The little red hellion thrust a finger at her. Naruto's is Klee's uncle, so that makes you an auntie. There. She crossed both arms before her chest, supremely satisfied with herself. You're part of Klee's family now. So you can't fight. Not allowed. Klee, Naruto put in, you can't just decide something like that. Klee can, and Klee will. She turned watery eyes upon him, and he winced. Silence passed between the adults. I will give this back to you. Naruto held Shinha's vision just out of reach, if you promise to behave. She managed a trembling nod. Here, then. The new Archon opened his fist. Her vision floated back to her, to land in her trembling hands. She tried to breathe and choke. Her knuckles whitened around it. No. She mustn't cry. She was an Adepti disciple. She was stronger than this. She would not falter, until her body betrayed her, like everything else. Tears spilled free, rolling down her cheeks, dripping down her chin. A fresh wave of misery hit her, but this one proved more powerful, more poignant than ever before. She tried to speak, but managed only a faint whine. Her knees buckled anew, driving her to the dirt. This time, she didn't have the strength to rise. Just like that? The word escaped her in a sob. After all this, you just make me a part of your family. Klee tilted her head as only a little girl could. Isn't that what the crane lady wanted? Naruto's head whipped away as Lisa made a pleased noise. Well, I suppose I wouldn't mind a bit of competition. Shinha scarcely heard it. Deep down, a tiny little voice in her heart cried out. She'd wanted a family. To be cherished. Loved. To see others having what she did not, what she could not, and then be denied it, such had wounded her more than words. Still to see spent at last, her fury faltered and her soul cracked. She didn't cry. She wept. Her body shook with great heaving sobs. With her anger spent, a new emotion welled up within her, joined by another, and another, then yet another, pure, bright, and powerful. I'm sorry! She bawled the words out, unable to control herself any longer. I didn't mean to. I was just so angry. She had meant to at one point. She definitely had. But she daren't say that. Those keen blue eyes read her like a book regardless. Oh geez. Distantly, she heard the Archon sigh, saw him crouched before her through teary eyes. Don't cry. He laid a hand on her shoulder and drew her head into his chest. Shinha jolted. The motion startled her. She hiccuped softly, more so when his free hand began to stroke small circles against the small of her back. No one had ever done such for her before. Not even Cloud Retainer. Was this something family did for one another? It made the tears burn all the more. How could someone so powerful be so kind? Only moments ago he'd been ready to kill her. She truly believed that. And yet now... There, he hummed softly. You're all right. Let's just let bygones be bygones, eh? It flipped Shinha's switch, and she lost control once more. She slammed into him, all but tackling the blonde in her haste to embrace something. Anything to push this awful feeling away. Naruto had absolutely no chance. He toppled back with a startled squawk. She drove him down to the ground, uncaring of her ruined attire. His arms closed around her body to catch her, likely to keep her from dashing her head against the rocky shore, and that was it. It was the final straw. She latched on for dear life, and latch hard she did, nigh on burying her head into his shoulder, as she bawled like the child she'd never been. "I'm sorry," she mumbled into his shoulder, babbling in her haste. "Sorry, sorry, sorry." "Hey, now," she heard him cough. "Your clothes. I can feel you know." Lisa made a startled noise. "Oh dear, they're quite visible." Paimon squeaked. "Somebody get her a jacket." Perhaps had Shinha been in a more coherent state of mind, she might have tried to cover herself. At this moment, she was far from saying. Because you see, she felt warm. Safe. Protected. A curious feeling, one she'd never thought to crave in all her days, yet now that she knew its touch, she wanted nothing more. She didn't care about anything else. Anyone else. Nothing would move her right now, not even Rex Lapis himself. Her heart had quieted, but in the absence of her rage, a new feeling persisted. It felt like, she didn't know what it felt like. Good. Pure. Regardless. She was never going to let it go. Naruto must have realized it too, because he stopped struggling. "You're not going to let me up anytime soon, are ya?" Shinha wasn't sure how much time passed after that, how long she simply clung to him. Until her tears ran dry? Possibly. She might have drifted off in her exhaustion. She wasn't sure. Who could say how long she spent like that? Seconds? Minutes? Hours? But surely time must have moved on, because she heard a sudden sharp noise behind her. It jolted her back to reality. "Look, look!" She craned her neck to find Klee pointing at the bay. "A ship's coming into port." She all but hopped in place, eyes shining with glee. "A really big ship. I wonder who's on it." Child disembarked quickly. It wasn't as if he wanted to, of course. In truth, he would have much rather stuck around the docks to see if the Archon showed, and the fireworks that followed. But as much as he might have liked to linger, he knew it just wasn't possible, couldn't. The factory didn't exactly have a good reputation in Teyvat these days, not even in a free city like Mondstadt, and he knew he'd have to tread carefully. Thus, the moment the crux docked, he made his excuses and slipped away. Zhongli must have done the same beforehand. He hadn't seen that sly bastard anywhere before leaving. Didn't matter. If there really was an Archon lurking in this city, he'd smoke them out soon enough. He suppressed a tiny smile at the thought as he slipped through another alley, dodging another patrol. Faye. And they called themselves knights. What a shame. This lot didn't even have visions. None of them were good for a bout. Just gotta be a little patient, he hummed to himself, skirting a barrel. Won't be long now. Anemo Archons were supposed to be strong, right? If so, he'd have the fight he desired. That was all he'd been searching for, really. A proper battle, a true foe, a worthy prize. If this one was strong enough to hold on to his gnosis and fend him, then that would be that. He, child, would die. He'd go to his grave without regret. But if he wasn't, then the tables would be turned. Snagging an apple from a nearby cart, he flung down some mora and sauntered deeper into the city. A hearty bite helped to lift both his spirits and his stamina. It also gave him time to think. He couldn't exactly go herring off hollering for the Archon to show himself. Best save that option for last. He'd not brought any men with him on this voyage. He had nothing to rely on save his own strength and arms. It would be enough. He was hardly about to ambush the bastard. Signora would have done that in a heartbeat. Not him. He needed that fight, craved it like the air in his lungs. Right then. Priorities. First have to ask around, find out what he looked like, then get him away from the city. And wouldn't you know it, where was someone to ask right now? His gaze alighted upon a little slip of a girl over there by the diner, all bright eyes and brighter hair, wrapped in a pale dress. There was another girl with her there, a brunette in red, but he paid that one little heed. She wasn't his target. "Hey there, girlie," he called out to the former. "Got a SEC?" The blonde turned, doe-like eyes blinking. "Are you talking to me?" "Yup, you." He polished off the last of his apple and tossed it into a nearby bin as he sauntered over. "Any chance you know this Archon guy I've heard so much about?" She hung her head, fists balling at her sides. "Did you call me girlie?" "Awfully hung up on that, this one." "Yes?" Her gaze rose to scowl at him. "No." "What? Well, that was fast." Child blinked. "No?" Lumen scowled right back, fire and fury wrapped in a small package. "No. You insulted me." Oh dear. He didn't like that look in her eyes. It wasn't an insult. Lies. Now what? Just a sec. Her elbow nailed him in the ribs. The harbinger doubled over with a groan. "Why me?" In the background, Amber palmed her face. "Why do I feel like I'm being ignored here?" Rosaria didn't hold much faith in the gods. Barbara wouldn't be much pleased to hear that, but there it was. The truth. She didn't particularly hate them per se, but neither could she bring herself to love them as most did, either. Why should she? Archons were strange figures, powerful yet distant, a reminder of the gap between humanity and the divine. Gods were ancient, cruel, foreign. They lived as they pleased, caring not who they trampled underfoot. Yet they demanded respect, love, and adoration from those beneath them. She liked it not. Honestly, if the gods cared more for their people, then so might she for them. But they didn't now, did they? As far as she was concerned, the world of Teyvat would be better off without them. One had but to look at the nations to see why. Sumera's deity was a naive little thing who kowtowed to corrupt advisors. The less said about Snezhnaya and its Tsaritsa, the better. Inazuma played host to a petulant shogun who pushed her will upon the people and stripped their visions away. Liyue had a reclusive lord who showed himself only once a year at best. Mondstadt had Barsabato. No, wait, it was Bartobas. Alright, maybe she couldn't remember his name. Didn't matter. Whatever his name, Mondstadt's oh-so-precious god of freedom had abandoned his people long ago. Free? Bah! Probably free to slack off and drink wine somewhere. Just thinking of it made her clench her teeth. Gods? Children, more like? They went and did as they pleased, and to hell with the consequences. Today's quarry was no different from the rest, no matter how much he might claim to be. Bloody blonde bastard, walking back into the city without a care in the world. And was that an adeptus on his arm? She looked like one. Had he really befriended her that easily? Only a few minutes ago they'd been trying to kill one another. How had he managed to tame her? It didn't make a lick of sense. He'd even managed to deceive Klee and Lisa, the bastard. Sister Rosaria. There you are. Cold eyes drifted shut with a tired sigh. Rosaria was not one for prayer. But in this moment, she prayed. Please don't be Barbara, please not Barbara, for the love of any god out there, don't let it be. She turned, looked down, and found earnest blue eyes gazing up at her. Yup. The gods were assholes. Barbara. Did you need something? She spoke in a languid manner, hoping she would take the hint. Whatever she wanted, she didn't have time for it. The idol of Mondstadt flinched beneath her gaze, tented her fingers, and stood her ground. Blast. Well, it's about the ceremony. I've told you already, I don't go in for that kind of thing. I've got more important matters to attend to. Every second she spent talking with this silly girl was another moment for her quarry to get away. You're wasting your time here. But this event has commemorative significance. Blasted girl didn't know how to take a hint. The church hopes that all sisters will be present when we lay the foundation for the statue. Rosaria nearly choked on her spit. Statue? It hadn't even been an hour after that display and they were already kowtowing to that blonde bastard? No, no, no. She wouldn't have it. She refused to accept it. Every fiber of her being rejected the very concept. Hopes? She bit down a snarl. That's odd, 'cause I don't recall a fulfill the hopes of others clause in my job description. Barbara faltered. I mean, sure, but... But what? Rosaria pounced with a wolfish smile, seizing the moment of weakness for what it was. You're the event organizer, aren't you? Do you not find it the least bit odd? The girl dithered and she pressed the attack. Someone sent you out to get me at this hour? Even if you turn around right now, I'd wager you'll still miss the opening ceremony. Unlikely if she ran, but still possible. Who knows? Maybe this is someone's grand plan to make a fool out of you. Her eyes widened. That can't be. People aren't like that. The bandit Rosaria once was scoffed at her naivete. They really are, little girl. Barbara didn't know the true face of this world. Many loved her for her innocence, her purity, but sometimes it frustrated her to no end. Ha! Evidence decides what people are like, not your feelings. Maybe you're a little too trusting of other people? The idol made a piteous noise, and so too did Rosaria take pity on her. Don't fret. She reached out to pat her head when it hummed. Nobody's gonna blame you if you go back empty-handed. I can't imagine anyone else was delusional enough to think I was gonna show up. Barbara made one last pitiful stab at it. But... Commemorative event. PSH, she scoffed. If this is about Barsabatos, then I'm doubly uninterested. Barbara's face flushed. You shouldn't disrespect the Lord Archon like that. Then why don't you ask him our new Archon? He's right over there. She jerked a thumb over her shoulder. This time the sneer she wore wasn't entirely feigned. Who knows? Maybe he'll only throw you into the lake. Barbara squeaked, no doubt recalling the spectacle they'd seen in the bay. Gotcha. Rosaria went in for the kill. But if you dally any longer, you really won't make it. It was the final straw. Barbara mumbled an excuse and scarpered. Rosaria watched her go with a sigh. Foolish girl. If she tried to bother that one, she'd regret it. This Naruto didn't strike her as the sort to enjoy worship, let alone needless questions. Stop. She tapped clenched knuckles against the side of her head to quell such maudlin thoughts. You're working. Focus. She leaned back out, following her target with watchful eyes. Despite Barbara's interruption, or perhaps in spite of it, he hadn't gotten too far into the city. Maybe his entourage was to blame for that. She didn't know. Didn't care. He was headed to the harbor now, with the rest of them well in hand. So calm. So carefree. It made her sick. But she'd seen his true colors, everyone had glimpsed them in that moment of fury down by the bay. She wouldn't be fooled. No. She refused. Still, he seemed so chipper now, a far cry from the fell ire she'd seen beforehand. When his merry band rounded a corner, she hastened after them. No matter what some, Barbara included, might think, this newcomer was not their god. Poor Barbara was all in a tizzy about that, unable to decide if he was the genuine article in disguise or merely some impostor with clever tricks. But what this individual lacked in divine right he more than made up in power. That in turn made Rosaria wary. Careful, she chided herself. Don't get caught. Who knows what he might do? She'd watched him for some time now, observing his movements from afar ever since he'd taken down Valen. It had taken every ounce of her skill to remain hidden. No one thought to question a sister of the church. Why would they? Most of Mondstadt knew her eccentricities by now. They'd chalk it up as nothing, unaware of her true work. Her identity was her armor, her shroud, a clever cloak with which to conceal herself. For if fear was a sure bet, then so too was suspicion toward a stranger such as him. This man swore he had no ulterior motives, Yet he'd worked quickly to ingratiate himself with the Knights of Favonius. Likewise, she'd seen his power. Archon or not, she would be a fool to face him head-on. It made her all the more paranoid, but she couldn't well leave him alone now, could she? He was clearly a danger. But to whom? Himself? Her? The world, or none of them? Arg. Rosaria wanted to know. More than anything. She had to know. Who was this Naruto really? What did he want? Would he become a threat to Mondstadt in time, like Obito? Or perhaps... After all, she wasn't one for trust. She would rather hunt in the wild than settle into a life of dutiful service as a sister. As far as she was concerned, the golden sunlight was not so much cleansing as blinding. It wasn't that she couldn't trust others, rather, she was just choosy about it. In a way, her current quarry reminded her of old man Varka, but brighter. He lived in the light, while she dwelled in the dark. It was better this way. But sunlight hid shadows of its own. He looked back suddenly. Their eyes met. Her soul froze. How did he notice me? And his gaze swept past. Cheeky boy, mocking her like that. She'd show him. But his smile had been pure. Good. Honest. Impossible. Such purity couldn't exist. And if it did, the red ropes were gone. Cloud Retainer confessed a certain concern to this, if only because she hadn't thought it possible. One could remove them, of course, as little Shinha had done a time or two, but one had not expected that they could be destroyed. She made them herself, and thus felt the very moment of their unraveling. Now one found herself vexed. Though she wished for her pupil to see the word, to do as such promised disaster. Her emotions might well rage out of control, bringing devastation in her wake. Cloud Retainer tutade once. Perhaps someone needed to retrieve little Shinha. She lifted a wing, considering herself. It has been some time since one wore the guise of a mortal. She craned her long neck to make certain no one was watching. Left. Right. Nary a soul in sight. Ganyu was far from here. Likewise, those old fossils Mountain Shaper and Moon Carver were also away, doing whatever it was they did. Content that none were present to witness her flight of fancy, she drew her wings around herself, closed her eyes and hummed softly. At her call, light burned, impossibly bright, obscuring her form from view. Wind sang, stirring the flowers around her in a gentle breeze. As the luminescence faded, died, bare feet settled upon the ground. Human feet. She twisted her hip to one side, running a hand down her flank. Full lips pursed, considering her pale, naked skin as she blinked with stark silver eyes. One may need to acquire clothes. Is that nun still following us? Kurama uttered a jaw-popping yawn. Yup. Naruto valiantly resisted the urge to look backward again, but only just. He could feel Rosaria gaze glaring a hole between his shoulders. Sizing him up. Trying to get the measure of him. To look again was to damn himself well and truly. He wasn't sure he could keep his tongue still if he looked her in the eye a second time. She's still muttering to herself, or am I imagining that bit? Nope. Naruto blew out a sigh and kept walking. Well, so long as she doesn't try anything. You're kidding, right? His partner's retort was nothing short of caustic. I can taste her frustration from here. She's not best pleased with you. Why? He resisted the urge to fling up his arms. I haven't even spoken to her. I know. You seem to have a unique talent for setting folk off in this world. Well, he bit out, she hasn't attacked or tried to seduce me. Frankly, I'm content to leave it at that. Uncle? A faint tug on his hair pulled him back to the waking world. You're making a scary face. Why did we stop? Familiar red eyes framed by pale hair filled his vision as his charge dangled herself over him. Aren't we gonna see the ship? Right. He'd given Klee a piggyback ride. Evidently that wasn't enough, because she decided to perch herself atop his shoulders. Maybe he's spacing out again. Paimon took the chance to flit closer in a whirl of starlight. Hello? Anybody there? I'm still here, he sighed and nudged the girl back with his free hand. Relax, you know. I've not forgotten anything. Her smile was nothing short of smug. Then you remember the 3-course meal you promised Paimon? Naruto knew had said no such thing, but he decided to humor her. A faint tug on his right arm took his attention elsewhere. Unfair. He looked down with a sigh. Did you say something, Shunha? Rather than answer, the Adeptus disciple buried her head into his shoulder. Lisa cooed softly behind him. Adorable. Where did I put my camera? I need a picture of this. Why was she enabling them? Naruto blew out a sigh. Trapped. He was strapped, and there was no way out but through. Shunha hadn't released his arm, or his hand for that matter, since their return to the city proper, and it didn't look like she would be any time soon. He could escape from her at any time, of course, but he had the strangest feeling doing so unprovoked would hurt her. At least they'd managed to patch up her outfit for now, thank the sage for small mercies. Creation of all things was a pretty handy technique. But all the power in the world couldn't save him from this predicament. If only Sasuke could see him now. He wasn't sure if his old friend would laugh at his plight, or simply scoff. Likely the latter. Sasuke seldom laughed, and only ever laughed in his darker moments. Wherever he was now, hopefully those emotions were long behind him. Now do you see? He could just imagine his old friend chiding him. This is what I had to deal with. Every day. As a body he'd been madly jealous of his rival. Indeed, back then he had craved the raw attention and adulation his nemesis attracted. Bastard seemed to get it just by existing, you know? He'd wanted that, craved the affection he gained just by being him. He'd wanted folks to look at him, too. To see him. Admire him, you know? But now, he didn't know what to do with all this attention. Shinha on one arm, Klee riding his shoulders, and Paimon floating ahead of him, all while a bemused Lisa looked on. Honestly, if Razor hadn't run off to fetch the knights, he would have been here, too. Somehow, without even realizing it, he'd formed a nice little, what was this, family, for himself? On the outside looking in, it might well appear as such. While the bonds he'd forged weren't quite that, all this attention was a little much. He couldn't even begin to explain it. Paimon had crashed into him, Lisa had come onto him, taking Razor in was a whim, and Klee, well, she'd declared him her uncle and that was that. He didn't rightly know what to make of Shin either. So long as she didn't make trouble he was content to let her have this moment, even if he didn't rightly know what this moment was. But he couldn't well ignore her. Not when she was pouting like that. Best do something about that. You alright? You've been pretty quiet. The crane in training made a conflicted noise. For now. Those bright, radiant eyes rose to meet his. I'm not sure if I'll lose control again. No worries. Naruto laughed. You won't. But what if I do? She glared at him. What if you're not around to stop me, next time? Alright. A fair question deserved a fair answer, he felt. Then you face those feelings head on, ask yourself why you feel them, and accept them. Shinha went silent for a moment. And then, the day you learn how to use your strength for the good of others, is the day you can truly become part of human society, huh? Naruto blinked, somewhat taken aback by the sudden philosophical turn. Pardon? She looked down. My master, she said that to me, once. Did she now? He tapped her on the nose when she nodded. All right. Let me add something to it. He tugged his hand from hers, ignored the displeased noise she made, and reached around to wrap it around her waist with infinite care. She stiffened for a moment, then relaxed and nuzzled closer, leaving them side by side as they walked. Listen to your heart, but don't ever let it control you. Maybe if he kept his chin up she wouldn't see him blushing like mad. Do what you think is right, you know? Shinha sniffled, unwilling to look him in the eye. You sound like my master. Do I? He smiled at her. She sounds like a very wise woman. She scooted closer still, melting into him and leaning her head against his shoulder. Forced to change pace, Naruto slowed a little, but kept walking. This close, he became intimately aware of her presence, and the faint scent of herbs. Warm. For someone who wielded a cryo-vision, Shinha was so incredibly warm. When she looked up at him, he stiffened. Paimon sees the ship. The moment shattered like so much glass. Shinha glared bloody red daggers at her, but the little fairy paid her no heed, already racing ahead. Klee all but leaped off his shoulders to race after her. There it was again, that surge of parental concern. Paimon was small. Tiny even. She might be learning to defend herself, but still. Klee, well, she'd probably blast anyone who tried to hurt her. Still, that didn't mean he wanted to see her get hurt. Good girls. Must protect. Yeah, that about summed it up. He cried out after them, hastening his pace. Don't run off. In short order they reached the harbor. Naruto didn't have much experience in the realm of ships. He would be the first to admit it, of course. He knew which was the front, what was the back, and that was about it. He'd only ever been on the sea a handful of time in recent memory. One to the land of snow, fond memories there. Hopefully Koyuki was still doing alright, and a few other miscellaneous missions that escaped him. Hell, he wasn't entirely sure how a ship got into the bay in the first place. Supposedly the waters of Mondstadt opened out into the ocean further north or some such. Who knew? It didn't change the fact that a ship had come in. Large and sleek, it rested against the dock, dwarfing all other vessels. A ramp had been flung down some time ago. One could see sailors swarming about it, unloading cargo and like. And there, just now coming down the ramp. Never quite get my land legs back after a long voyage. Shinha stilled against him. That was his only warning. A woman clad in red and black disembarked the vessel at a languid pace, hips swaying, dark hair flowing in the breeze. She was confidence personified, uncaring of who saw her. She paused at the edge of the wharf, saw him and tilted her head, regarding his torn shirt and his scars. Her lone eye narrowed upon him, and he found himself thinking of a sea dragon he'd seen once. Even with one eye she was a beauty to behold. He could say that with full confidence now that he knew what true beauty was. Damn it, Lisa. Life had been so much simple when he was blind to such things. Speaking of which, children aside, why did every vision wielder look like a supermodel? It was a question that bore pondering, a question he didn't have time to answer, because the captain he could only assume such was upon him. There was no escape. Well, aren't you a sight for sore eyes? She planted a hand on her hip. See something you like? Naruto saw several things, but he kept his eyes firmly on hers face. A blonde brow quirked. Can I help you? Shinha squirmed free of him and muttered something under her breath. It sounded more than a little like a curse. The captain followed her with a questioning look, only to earn a baleful one in return as she stormed past. Naruto watched her stalk away toward Paimon and Klee, shoulders tense, chin held high. In the end she thought better of staring her down as did he, and turned her attention back to him. Nope. She smacked her lips with an audible pop. Just admiring the goods the way you were admiring my ship. Right. Goods. Ship. Naruto coughed into a fist. And you are? Beidou, captain of the Crux. She extended a hand to him. Nice to meet ya. Naruto. Without a second thought, he reached out to grasp her hand. Her fingers bit down against his immediately, testing his strength. Instinct demanded he return the gesture in kind. He found himself treated to a rare widening of her eye as his palm crushed against hers. And yet she didn't yelp in pain. He could have shattered every bone in her hand, and yet her smile didn't waver. Not in the least. Quite the grip you got there. Her tone took on a teasing edge. You good with your hands? Even he couldn't miss that. Color flooded his face as he released her hand, feeling positively scalded. Hey! Relax, she swatted his shoulder. I'm just joking. Couldn't help myself. Was she? He wasn't so sure. Her emotions were like a storm-tossed sea, none of them negative. He couldn't even begin to discern what she felt. Behind him, Lisa hummed softly. Well, someone has a keen eye, and no shame at that. I think I might like you. Eh? Beta balked, but only for a moment. Then she threw head back and laughed. Feelings mutual. She cast the magician an appraising grin. What's your name? Lisa made to respond, but her words were lost as another woman with long hair descended the ramp after Beidou. Naruto's jaw clicked open. His gnosis sang in his heart, sensing a long-lost friend. Right. Beidou was smiling for some reason, like she knew some grand secret. He wondered what it was. Almost forgot the reason I came here. I've got someone who wants to meet you. I do apologize for the untimely arrival. A new voice intoned, thrumming in a low contralto. Clad in an flowing amber robe, the newcomer was the very picture of stoicism. She was the same height as him, no, maybe a little taller at a stretch. Keen eyes met his, bright and alert, framed by a curtain of dark tresses so long as to nearly touch the dock itself. When she moved, he glimpsed the pale expanse of a slender thigh beneath by the log. He hoped she was wearing something under that, yet every stride was measured, collected. Calm. There was something about her, something odd. It has been some time since I last set foot in Mondstadt. Those peerless orbs met his, sharp and alert, singling him out. And yet so much has changed, in more ways than one. He didn't like the way she was looking at him. If Bibia was a predator, then this person was a force of nature. As if he stood in the shadow of a looming avalanche, like the very earth prepared were to throw itself against him if he said the wrong word. Well, if she wanted a fight, she wouldn't find him wanting. He found himself standing that much straighter, squaring his shoulders, lifting his chin to look her in the eye. In his peripherals he was vaguely aware of Lisa stepping forward to stand beside him. For the first time, he noticed the complete and utter absence of her signature smile. The heck are you? Morix Shongli hummed softly. Call me Morahem. She coughed into her fist to hide the slip. May will do. She reached out, clasping his hands in hers. Might I have a moment of your time? Eh? Naruto's brow furrowed before he recovered. Look, lady, I've had a really long day. Unless someone's in danger, whatever this, he waved a hand, I ain't in the mood for it. I see. Her eyes flitted to his ruined clothes. It seems I've come at a bad time. Tomorrow evening, then. It didn't sound like a question. Who on earth was this Maeve anyway? And why did he have a bad feeling about this? Angel's Share was a fine place for a drink. Refined yet rustic, it hosted a wide variety of wine and liquor, many of which they were all too happy to partake of. That said, Naruto still wasn't sure why he'd come, much less accepted Maeve's invitation tonight. He and his party, sans Paimon and the kids, who'd fled upstairs the moment bottles appeared, found themselves seated across the enigmatic Maeve and her associate? Was that Beta's purpose here? Semantics, he supposed. Regardless, the captain was here now and didn't seem keen on leaving. Quite the contrary. If anything, she still seemed inordinately pleased with herself for reasons he didn't understand. Shinha scooted a little closer to him, hip brushing his under the table. Naruto shivered, and not at all in a bad way. Ignore it. She's just being friendly. Lisa less so on his left. Her free hand traced his thigh and gave it a comforting squeeze. Friendly. Sure. Right. Ahem. He coughed to stave off an impending lust attack. So, the reason you wanted to meet. All in good time. Maeve smiled and sipped at her wine. First, let us thank the proprietor for letting us use your venue. Dialect muttered something less than pleasant under his breath, but prepared another bottle for them nevertheless. Naruto winced his way. Seemed a decent fellow, that one. At least he wasn't falling over himself to worship him like all the rest. Good to see a sensible sort in this crazy city. Just how much money had Maeve thrown at this man? Or did she have something else over his head? Of course, Beta wasn't about to leave him be. Ever drank before? The ghost of a smile touched Naruto's mouth. Once. Good. She leaned across the table, all but purring the words. She'd been drinking this entire time, the absolute lush. Then you won't mind a drinking game while we wait for our friend. In the background, Shinha tilted her head and contemplated bloody murder. Her eating fork stabbed into the table. Maeve quirked a brow, but continued to indulge herself. This is no osmanthus wine, but it is a fine blend nonetheless. Now then. Wait. Klee leaned down over the railing from the second floor, touching a finger to her lips. If you're playing a game, then does this mean I have another ante? Naruto toppled back with a wheeze even as Lisa giggled. Maeve merely smiled. Such a lively young girl. I quite like her. What say you to an additional wager? And just like that, all Naruto's embarrassment turned to ash in his mouth. What kind of wager we talking about? He dragged himself back up to the table with a snarl. You trying to distract me? Perish the thought. I merely see no need to waste good wine with sour talk. Much to his chagrin, she remained unreadable as ever. Beta at least he could get a beat on. Easily at that. She was in this for the laughs, some amusement, maybe a good time. Maeve though, who was she, that she could mask her emotion, her intentions, from him so thoroughly? I like the way you think. Naruto sighed. Beta, you're drunk? Clearly not enough. She winked. There's still only one of you. Heat hit his ears. That could mean so many things, more so when shadow clones were involved. Lisa touched a finger to her lips. Now there's a thought. Shinha blinked. Whatever is a shadow clone? Where no thaving this conversation? Beta flashed him a cheeky grin, snatched the bottle from the table and slammed it to her lips. Her good eye drooped in half-lidded bliss as she drank deeply, and kept drinking. When Naruto made to speak, she held up a hand, forestalling him. Just how much tolerance did this woman have? She'd give Tsunade a run for her money. Ah! She slammed it down with a pleased purr. That's much better. Actually felt the burn on that one. Shinha clenched her teeth hard enough to spit sparks. Naruto could them grinding from here, already feel her emotions spiraling down. A quick pat on the head put paid to that, but not in the way he would have liked. Rather than decompress, she latched on. Latched hard. Firm fingers clamped down onto his arm and her head kissed her shoulder. Was she clinging to him? She was? He would have found it adorable, if she wasn't brimming with killing intent towards Beta. Lisa, of course, cooed happily at the sight, unflappable as ever. Naruto felt his shoulders slump. He knew where this was going. This is going to be a long night, ain't it? But before we begin, a question. Maeve set her wine down. I would ask you. Eyes of spun gold met perplexed blue. One force unto another. What do you intend with that gnosis? Naruto's blood ran cold. What? What do you intend to do with that gnosis? Naruto's blood ran cold. What? All around him the world slowed as his mind sped up, racing. Kurama understood the danger as well, his stomach burning dimly as whatever liquor that lay in his system smoldered away, giving him his full wits and then some. She knew about his gnosis? How? Only Paimon was aware of it. The knights had the faintest semblance of an understanding. With her recap of the matter to the knights, Paimon had, charmingly, referred to it as a doohickey. He thought as good of them as to believe that they didn't think that to be the actual name, but all the same, they were not aware of its true name. And after the blowout between them, Naruto did not stay long enough to feed them such detail. Maeve smiled at him, betraying nothing. If she was knowledgeable enough to know about his his gnosis, then she was dangerous as he thought her to at first be. But what did she want? Did she have some issue with the gods? An issue with Venti, Barbatos? Issues with those parading as gods? Which he wasn't trying to do, mind you, but still. She bears one. He blinked, somewhat taken aback. Bears what? A gnosis. Lovely. She does. How do you know? I sense it, just as our gnosis senses it. I can feel it calling out to her. His mind leaped to a particularly unpleasant conclusions. Wait. She's a god? Or a god hunter, or maybe she's like us, ladled with holding on to it? Kurama paused for a moment, perhaps deliberating over the issue himself. Don't be rash here, Naruto. We'll survive her, but the others may not. Blast. The others. He'd almost forgotten. He took to his left, where Shinha clung to his arm. She looked about as ready to bail as he. Seeing to his right, he saw Lisa, who seemed curious, yet alert. Quick to note his stare, she gave his thigh a gentle squeeze under the table, message clear. She deferred to him. If he fled, she'd follow. If he fought, she'd follow still. Across the table sat Beidou, who seemed more interested in their, now her, bottle of liquor. Maeve brought her along, but certainly hadn't informed her of as much as Naruto first thought. She seemed innocent of this all. The most innocent of them all lay above them, Paimon, Razor, Klee. Their guiltless laughter rang in his ears, louder as the alarms ringing in his mind. This was a trap. It made sense now. That she would allow him to bring as many people as he'd will. That she held their discussions be in the heart of Mondstadt. That she chose a place tended by a man that held no love for any archon of an Emo. This bar was a pretty cage where he could not fight as he'd best choose. But she could slaughter at her will, should he not abide. He wanted to growl something cruel, and more than a bit crude. A darker part of him wanted to reach across the table and... Don't. Kurama's warning rooted him. And the fox was right to do so. He could go feral, be like the coyote that snapped wildly, gnawing off its leg to chance freedom. But he was not the one in danger here. He was the only one not in danger. His eyes flashed towards Maeve, colder, harsher now. She remained unvexed, tranquil, steady. Well? What say you? She repeated the question again as if he hadn't heard her the first time. What do you intend with that gnosis? His brow furrowed. Who are you? I believe I asked the question first. Her smile didn't waver in the least. I'd see an answer to it, and in redress I'll give the answer you seek. She handled him as if they were making a deal. Like she hadn't sauntered in and threatened to uproot his newfound life. As if she was not a threat of being slain for his greater good. But if that was how she wished to play it, then so be it. If she wanted to negotiate, then he'd follow along. Should we be having this discussion here? He planted one arm on the table and leaned forward. Now? Perhaps the two of us could find a nice alcove to the coast? That came out too close as a growl. Or so Kurama thought. If the shock of energy sent coursing, painfully, through his body was indicative of as much. I am fine here, thank you for the offer though. The smirk Maeve gave was too coy. It gave her face a punchable quality. The walls are thin and the people chatty. Naruto gestured over to Dialek and the drunken adventurers he was showing a table to. Whatever Maeve did to get Dialec's favor, it was enough to get the bar cleared out. Not enough to stop new arrivals. Her smile proved decidedly limpid in its sincerity. You of all should know, this conversation will only be for those you'd wish to hear. What I mean by that? Did she intend to kill anyone that so tried to eavesdrop? Sound is carried on the wind after all. She moved quickly to clarify. Oh. He paused, looking deep into himself. Grabbing a hold of his gnosis, he tugged and the wind responded. Air picked up in the vicinity, much more than would be possible in a place where windows were shut so snugly. You needn't try so hard. Maeve's voice broke above the winds. What? Naruto stopped cold, now noticing how frightened patrons had eyes on him, noticing how Dialec had a glare pressed towards their general direction. In the end, his savior came from an unlikely source. A little blonde girl slammed her glass down on the counter behind the redhead. He was so annoying, Master Dialec. Hey! Are you paying attention to me? I wasn't finished. With a long-suffering sigh, he turned to face her. Lumen, please, I think you've had enough. No. She kicked at his shin from her stool. I'm not done. Naruto held back a chuckle. The poor redhead cast him a long-suffering look as the little blonde continued to rail at him. He noted her flushed cheeks and half-empty glass. Lightweight, much? Something told him this wasn't an uncommon occurrence. Help me. Nope. He held up a hand to stall him. You're on your own. Have fun with Little Miss Tipsy. Little Miss who now? Paimon made the mistake of floating their way just then. The blonde girl's eyes flashed. It was her only warning. Poor Paimon. She never saw her coming. Aren't you just adorable? Can I keep you? Please? Gah! Let go! Paimon is not a tie. Meh. She'd survive. With the wind gone and their host distracted, Maeve's voice quieted as she spoke her next words. The gnosis is not a mere tool, nor is it shy. It's a part of you for now. He didn't much like the way she tagged on the for now, but bade to allow her to continue her talk. It's an extension of you. Much the way a muscle is. But as long as you view it as apart from you, as long as you force it, you will only get such wild results. It pained him to agree, but he saw reason, so he followed her calling. Calming himself, he drew into himself and welcomed the gnosis deeper within. He felt it sing, as if in celebrating finally being allowed to belong. He smiled the smallest of smiles. He didn't know why, but the gnosis' joy felt as his. But with a better hold, he tried his hand. First, outwards, he called forth noise far beyond his ears' reach. We shouldn't play this too reckless. His presence could help turn the tide with our factory dealings. Jean, spoken from her office in the headquarters of the Knights of Favonius. Fair play will let Lisa have her way. Though I get the strangest suspicion she's doing as she will beyond the Order's best interest. Kia. So they still schemed on him beyond his wishes. I do hope Lord Barbados takes kindly to this renewed effigy. A discussion amongst nuns off towards the way of the cathedral. He didn't like the sound of what they were planning. Midnight Phantasmagoria. The battle cry of a warrior is fighting hilichurls far to the south of Mondstadt, accompanied by what sounded like sparks of lightning. Stupid Archon. That declaration was two-toned. One coming like a whisper from their scarlet tender beyond the bar. The other from just outside by a window sill on their left. Why did he get the feeling that it was the same nun that trailed him so? Next, he tried to do the inverse, stopping noise in its approach. Hey, Beidou, what did you do to see my shirt gone? Indecent. Shinha pinched his hand hard. But he weathered it, and would weather the bruise to form as he focused on the hard-edged brunette. The Crux Captain's loan. I went wide as the bottle slipped from her lips. She rambled on, likely something explicit, but they would never know as no sound made it to them. You're learning, well done, Maeve gave him a smile that crushed his good mirth. Her praise felt like venom in his veins. But with the games over, he focused on his actual task. A sphere to make their talk soundproof formed up around them, thereby ensuring that their talk could remain private. Weren't you looking for an excuse to take this away? Damn it! Why'd you let me go through all that? I'm busy enough between trying to hold you back from making this a conflict and preparing the energies for when you do. Where's the faith? You not wish to be a god. Remember? Shut up. Naruto turned back to Maeve, who continued to wait for him. She got what she wanted, so she could be as patient as she wished. Where were we? Our discussion was moving towards your gnosis. Naruto sighed. This woman was relentless. Why is it that you care? You continue to ask questions before answering my own. Here at last her smile thinned. If you want an answer, then be so willing as to grant me mine first. Why you? Fine. He flung up an arm, thumping the table. It didn't make a sound. Strange. I don't know what to do with this thing, okay? A bit of energy rushed to his eyes regardless. Had he a mirror handy, he would have seen them a bright green. In case you haven't noticed, I'm not this place's Archon. Venti Barbados, whatever you'd call him. I'm not him. Maeve's head bobbed in a nod. I'm well aware. You are? Naruto felt overjoyed. Finally! Someone that believed him when he said he was just some guy. Not just humoring his denial as Paimon and Lisa did. And not someone that just didn't care about Archons, as with Dialek. He could almost forget his growing disdain for this woman. I am, she clarified, and yet here you are, holding his gnosis. Why? He could almost forget. Not by choice. Cheeky little bastard gave me this gnosis, shoved it into me, to keep it safe. Ran off before I could slam it back in him the hard way. I want to chase him down and have him take it, but I can't begin to figure where I'd find him. There's a part of me, a small part, that wants to keep it though. I'm as strong as needed without it. He clenched his fist. But this is a new type of power. The powers that the Gnosis offered him didn't make him any stronger than he was before, not yet at least. But it offered a new paradigm, expanded his toolbox, gave him options that Futon alone could not account for. She tilted her head, a strand of dark hair falling across an amber eye. Do you find it addictive? Nope. He scoffed. The moment I see Barbados Venti, he'll take back up this yoke. Its burdens outweigh the perks. Well. No. She frowned. Pardon? Nope. He repeated, taking some petty pride in the scowl that followed. An answer for an answer, remember? Very well. Maeve took the jab in stride and folded both hands in her lap. You'd wish to know who I am? No. Has your mind shifted so suddenly? The gnosis of Anemo suits you. Enough of that, Naruto growled and earned himself another shock of energy to rattle his bones. I'll frame my question better, so you don't try to evade. Her smile was sly again. Projecting, perhaps? Naruto took that on the chin, not to be distracted. He drove his inquiry home. Why do you care about my gnosis when you have one for yourself, Miss Archon? Maeve bristled. For all she was, for as calm and in control as she tried to be, she bristled. Everyone else present was just as shocked. Lisa was agape. Likely thinking to be in the presence of two Archons. Darn her for not getting it through that cute head of hers that he didn't count as one. Beidou was speechless, and not due to his gnosis, doing. She actually put the bottle down proper, turning to Maeve with an accusing wag of her finger. Aha! Shinho was perhaps the weirdest in her reaction, balancing between keeping a hold of him and going into a bow, saying something about Rex Lapis. What was he to do with these women? Am I projecting now? Still he felt triumphant, getting one over on this woman, at least. You are. Maeve leaned in, resting a hand on her chin. I would have revealed as much without you altering the question. Bullshit. Believe as you will. Maeve reclined once more, back pressed to her chair. But I'm in a similar boat to you. Unlikely, but he gave her bait a tug. Enlighten me. I am a vessel for an Archon's gnosis. She held up one hand, revealing a faint, if dusty glow across her fingers. Although I was granted it only for the purpose of meeting you. It'll be back with Rex Lapis the moment I'm back in Liyue territories. Why? I am normally meant to stay by my Archons, Rex Lapis sighed. Even the other Adepti might not be aware of me. Shinha spoke up suddenly, speaking out in swift motion, using words too esoteric for him to care to grasp or remember. Maeve returned in kind, smoothly responding with a phrase all her own, just as mind-numbing. It seemed to edge Shinha on to say more. She snapped something. And Maeve again returned to her reply. Shinha pressed. And so Maeve humored. This went on for what felt to be too long before Shinha nodded at last. Indeed, she is an Adeptus. That calmed Naruto a bit. He didn't know much more about the Adepti, only what he could glimpse from Shinha's meager explanations the night prior. But he was made aware enough that the Adepti served Rex Lapis, whose letter Shinha had delivered. This guy is thorough, sending so many people to forewarn his arrival. He tried to sound casual, knowing that those of Liyue might be just as fanatical about Rex Lapis as Mondstadtians were for Barbados. But he did not bother to veil his frown. This Rex Lapis felt more and more like a man, god, that thought too highly of himself. If he wished to talk, then step forth already, although he would grant him so thanks for introducing him to Shinha. Maeve not so much. That is what I have been trying to say. That your Rex Lapis? Lisa slipped that with flawless grace, the smooth criminal that she was. Maeve took the remark in stride. As much as, he is Barbados. So you are. Lisa chirped happily. Hey! Naruto bit out, but the woman gave him a look, as knowing as it was sultry. Yet she knew nothing. Nothing at all. He would have a word more to the woman but thought better of it. He'd not be distracted, so he cut his losses and turned back to Maeve. Carry on. Thank you. Maeve gave him a smile that felt genuine for the first time, happy to have the focus once more. I've been sent by Rex Lapis as his proxy. He's grown weary in his age and with the rite of dissension in fast approach, felt it best to leave this matter in my able hands. Should things go well here, he'd see you for drinks in Liyue. Was it weary or paranoid? But it was all fine to him. The longer he could stay from the side of a god, the better. And he thinks you able to deal with me. He'd hope that I not have to find out. Long Lash fluttered in a slow blink. Despite what you believe, I have never intended any harm at any point, yesterday or now, nor do I wish for conflict. You have a funny way of showing it. Despite his callous remark, Naruto found his shoulders slumping, just a touch. His guard still held high, but he allowed himself to recline in his seat. Lisa fell back with him, her ease going the way of his, much to Shinha's naked displeasure. All the same, he gave me his gnosis. Maeve hastened on, seeing no need for it on high, and thinking that it'd validate my authority as his hand. So what now? Now? I'd ask for your gnosis. And all pretenses were gone. Skyward's spine shocked to life behind him, and he ready to grasp it. Lisa's spell book was afloat before her, and Shinha's spear was already pointing, not at him but Maeve. It warmed his heart that she'd side with him, but wouldn't that cause her problems? Beidou, for her part, bared forth a bottle. A grin that could split steel on her face as she chugged away. Finally, some entertainment. But to all this, Maeve raised a steady hand. Please allow me to explain. Be quick about it. He growled, and he received no shock from Kurama. Instead, his old friend growled with him as well. As did his Gnosis. They were all on board for murder. You said it yourself? For all the fury facing her, Maeve didn't flinch. That you are holding on to that Gnosis only for the sake of Barbados. Yeah, he bit out, so you've no right to it. End of the Archon. Rex Lapis and Barbados are noted for their closeness. That's true. Lisa hummed, drawing a black look from him. Of the Archon, Lord Barbados has had conflicts with many, but Rex Lapis and the Raiden Shogun have been said to be close confidants of his in the past, though I'm not sure how he'd react to the Shogun's sudden shift, but of Rex Lapis I think that's the closest friend that anyone could name for our Archon. What's that to do with anything? He'd sent that for Maeve, but Lisa seemed to frown at his dismissal. He'd make to apology later. It means that in lieu of being able to find Barbados, entrusting it to Rex Lapis might be the next best bid. Maeve's assurance did little to cool his anger. He'd hold it safe until it may return to the proper hands. And if I want to hold it until I can see it to Barbados? Then you'll suffer the consequences. Maeve leaned back, not because of some supposedly vicious barb, but because the spearhead of Shinha's calamity queller was all but in her throat. Golden eyes flicked to it. How unfortunate. It would seem that you continue to misconstrue my words. No, it would seem that you're just bad at using them. Lisa's quip was so dry that Naruto thought to offer her a drink if Beta hadn't drunk it all. But the buxom seafarer was off to the bar for another bottle, only after realizing that dialect could not hear them from here. What are these consequences you're on about? Naruto asked as he rubbed at the small of Shinha's back. He appreciated her loyalty, really he did, but if she took the life of an adeptus she'd no longer be welcome to Mondstadt, and likely be wanted, in the wrong way, in Liyue. She calmed at his ministrations, her spear vanishing to the ether. Maeve made a noise caught somewhere between a laugh and a sigh. The Gnosis has many purposes, too many to name, but one such as that it makes lesser gods more, makes them into archons. She held out a hand, conjuring an image of a shining figure in her palm, resplendent with great golden light. It's subtle in its beginning, but the longer it remains the more permanent the whole takes. Before long only a fellow archon will be able to undo what is done. Barbados's hand may not be enough. That was a sobering reality, and it needed Kurama's melding to come across. But I'm no god, he began, but Maeve merely shook her head in stoic disagreement. I mean not to lay claims at what you are, but a gnosis cannot be tossed around flagrantly. Her fist closed around the figure she'd conjured, crushing it. Its might burns away at those unworthy and unprepared. Only a god of sufficient might could hope to house it, yet more call upon its ability with such ease as you've displayed time and again. Not even the Alleghenies could not hope to bear. Allo what now? Demigods. Kurama supplied. Wanna run that by me again, furball? That term she used it refers to those of divine, yet mortal birthing. I'd dumb it down to demigods for you. Apologies. Maeve offered, not aware of the conversation Naruto already held. I suppose more common term is vision wielder. Mic drop. Hush, and how do you know what an alawatz it is? I've existed for 1,000 years and actually listen when wise men speak. Take a guess how'd I know? Right. As one of his closest friends, confidant, and fellow sure-talker Naruto could forget that Kurama was old enough to be a grandfather many times over, if he had been a human at least. Though the context here about the Allegheny, vision wielders, gave him more of an impression of this world. In the people's eyes those that wielded visions were already demigods, so of course someone that could trump their demigods in scale would have to be the authentic article, a proper god. It all. Allegheny? Lisa hummed. What a pretty term, the first I'm hearing of it though. Naruto deflated. Never mind, it still didn't make a lick of sense. You have to believe me, his grunt was full of defeat, yet he persisted. I'm no god. Perhaps not before, but the Gnosis has a way of changing matters. Maeve eyed him with no contempt or expectation, but with a gaze full of curiosity, regarding him the way that a caring adult would spy on a child as they carry out their whims. In the way he'd watch over Klee or Razor or Paimon. Naruto missed when she tried to be more impossible to read. The more they talked, the more she showed herself and the more Naruto found himself wishing to be rid of her. Do tell me, what does godhood, mean to you? This opportunity is quite hard to come by. Morax did not much enjoy it when her own machination came into play against her. Tartaglia was to be her wild card. A chaotic force that would put a challenge to the fledgling Anemo Archon. One that would call Naruto to action, not because she so explicitly willed it, but because battling and pursuing strong enemies was the only way child knew to live. This was why Maeve allowed for such a tag-along. Had she known that the new Archon already faced his own form of challenge, she would have left the Harbinger to continue his Tsaritsa's will in Liyue. Naruto was a peculiarity. An outlander, for what could he be except thus, that held his own preconceived notions of what it meant to be God. And in the face of those beliefs, he vehemently, categorically refused to take on the title, even as the gnosis inside him called him more and more to uphold the new rank bequeathed to him by Barbatos' doing. She had no belief that Barbatos would take the gnosis up again. She and the former Anemo Archon were indeed close, birthed from the fact that he too was a reluctant Archon. In the 2,000 years that the installed Archon of Mondstadt had been called to serve, he spent just as much time traveling and in slumber as he had watching over the City of Freedom. No, rather, it had been more. Many of those years were spent in Liyue, for amongst the 7, she'd been the one most likely to suffer Barbatos' company. Makoto, Beelzebub, had also been swift friends to the Lord of Anemo, when she lived, rest her soul. But Ball, the shy mouse, had closed herself to all of them after the cataclysm. Had Morax and Barbatos not been in their own mourning, for Beelzebub and more, perhaps they could have stopped her from her self-imposed isolation. All this to say, she was well aware that Barbatos would remain a former Archon unless Naruto proved to be truly incompatible with the duties within. Say as you would, but Venti, a new name for him to take, was someone that would not allow Mondstadt to fall to ruin, but as long as it thrived without his aid, he'd pass on the torch of protector to any taker, to Dvalin, to Andreas, to Vanessa and her knights, and now to Naruto. Rather, if Naruto would prove as valiant of a protector of those last pulled into the role was yet to be seen. But for now, she'd aid in stopping him from committing murder. Who are you supposed to be? Naruto shot the question as Child was already upon them, sauntering into the bar. The Harbinger of the Fatui's eyes cut across each of them. Taking them all in quick order, his eyes lingering on her for too long, before settling on Naruto and the spear that swayed too close to the blonde to be anyone else's. No vision? Tartaglia asked as the boy pulled his spear back into the ether, not taking kindly to how Child's eyes beheld it. I have no need for it. Naruto put it as simply as that, not caring to elaborate, yet that seemed to only interest Child more so. Conjuring a weapon without a vision, that's a bit unheard of, don't you think, my friend? I'm special, a regular old oddball. Got a problem with that? Nothing of the sort. Child laughed a hollow laugh. A dangerous laugh. The odd ones are the best after all. I'm considered to be the same in my homeland. Perhaps we could compare oddities? Naruto leaned away from the Harbinger, whilst little Shinha seemed to take affront to Child's yearning, grasping at Naruto's arm and casting at glare youngest Harbinger. Maeve found the whole show an amusement. She hadn't had such since taking this form. Young Tartaglia's battle lust could be taken as a lust of a different sort to the uninitiated, which seemed to be what was occurring at this moment. Who are you? The question was asked again by said blonde, now more incredulously. A business associate. Maeve chose then to step in, for the sake of the Archon and the Harbinger both. Oil and a match, these boys were, and without someone to step between them, the results would be as you'd expect them to be. He's the moneybags that funded this trip. Beta tagged on, plunking down onto the bench. But don't get the wrong idea. We're not with him. The dauntless captain of the Crux fleet felt no allegiance to the Fatui and chose now to make that known. I would have cast him overboard a few times if it didn't mean I'd have to return the deposit. She, Beidou, really wished for her distaste to be known here. And here I thought we'd formed a bond, Captain. Childs was only hurt so much as to be theatrical about it. The Harbinger knew better than to think that anyone in this part of the world would accept his ilk. And you, his eyes returned to her for the first time since coming to bother their little group. I do believe this is the first we've met. Nonsense, I was certain that Zhongli made introductions between us before now. Child did not look to buy it but shrugged regardless of that. Maybe he did, that geezer rambles on for eons, so maybe you popped in once I stopped listening. Cheeky brat. But if you're with him, then maybe you've seen him. I've not caught wind of him since the first leg of our travels. I'm afraid that he's fallen ill. The seas are not his friend, so he'd taken to the deeps of the Alcor to rest. Maybe I should visit him then. The Harbinger eyes warned of being on to something. Maeve had no fear of him actually figuring out what he thought he might know. Beidou would sooner have the man's head than allow him to take a free purchase of the Alcor's innards. Worse to worse, she really did have the body of Zhongli in weight in the Alcor's depths. Maeve, Zhongli, Rex Lapis. Maeve was not lying when she called herself a vessel for a god's gnosis. The deity that was Morix was an amorphous one, as all Archon were. The vessels that they took on were only for the convenience of interacting with mortals. All of them favored to impose their will, their consciousness, one vessel at a time as she, he, or it, depending on the vessel's criteria, but managing two vessels was not beyond the might of Morix. They chose to become Maeve for this venture, so as to have a fresh slate in her dealings with Naruto. But calling Zhongli to order to placate Child's whims, if only momentarily, was within their wheelhouse of options. But for now, she would stay as Maeve, and as Maeve, she'd say, he'd welcome some osmanthus wine to bring on some comfort. Perhaps you'd fetch me a flask while you're at it. A delicacy to Liyue in Mondstadt? His eyes sparked. It would have been better to bring that along instead, no? She smiled. Are the funds of the factory too shallow to deal with such a matter? An appeal to pride was all it took to drag Child away from further questioning. I'll see the barkeep about any imports that might have been made. And off he was, unknowingly slipping from the bounds of their sphere of privacy to speak with Dialek on a drink that Mondstadt proper did not hold, she'd know. She spent the night prior trying for a proprietor who would grant a cask to them so as to keep her own reserves stashed. It had cost Child a pretty penny and a trip to the deep cellars of Dawn Winery to find it, if Dialek would wish to part with them at all. Associating with the factory, Lisa let her voice be heard. I thought better of the Adepti. Rex Lapis does not offer more freely, even to his own underlings. A truth, she saw currency as a means to endow value to contracts. That value would deflate if she tossed coin at her every whim or the whims of her Adepti. So the factory can find value in Liyue just as they do with the Order of Favonius. That jab was a needed one, lest the Electro which not notice the hypocrisy of condemning them for a shared ally. Is it wise to carry on this talk with him present? Shinha's question was rhetoric. All discussion of archons and the obligations of God, of a divinite oblige, would end here for today. We can talk more of this later. An alcove to the coast? Naruto's offer was one that Maeve might humor another time, but for now, she gave it only the lightest of acknowledgments. For now let's see to drinks to edge off our earlier dealings. Here. Beidou was off to grab more booze, moving with gusto, shoving a bartering Child to the side. You really are a sly one, you know. Naruto beheld her in a different way now, bright blue eyes intent upon her own. Cheeky boy. I truly mean no harm. My only desire is to carry out the will of my Lord Rex Lapis, to ensure the lands of a dear friend are in good hands. I don't claim this place as mine. He touched a hand to his chest, which pulsed with green light for a moment before stilling. Venti's gonna take his place back even if I have to drag him kicking and screaming. His words aside, Naruto seemed calmer now. At peace perhaps, to know that it was not her desire to force his hand here and now. I'll show that tone-deaf bard what for. Tone-deaf bard? Maeve bit her lip to hide a smile. We'll take about that future and what aid I might offer in it, once properly free of the factory's scion. Still on about that. Beta returned to them, arms filled with bottles and mugs. Her constant visits to Dialect seemed to have worn at the pyro user enough for him to just offer the bar, or a good portion of its inventory, to the eye-patched woman. I've come here to drink and I'd have it we'd do that. She poured up 2 tall pints and offered one to Naruto. The latter leaned back, eyeing it evilly. What's this for? She grinned. Our drinking game, obviously. Lisa made a pleased noise and nudged him within a blow. Right. Forgot about that. Naruto turned to Maeve with a sigh. Still want to put up a wager? Maeve hummed. I'll leave that to my colleague. She rounded on Beidou. The already drunk brunette grinned with much glee and mischief. Shinha felt all warm and fuzzy inside, and it was completely at the fault of the wine. Yup. All the wine's fault. As the disciple to the adeptus that most exemplified wisdom and knowledge, liquors had always been a curiosity for which she'd ever been only granted limited interaction. Half a glass of osmanthus wine on exceptional occasions was the most she was allowed within Cloud Retainer's purview. Alcohol rotted the mind, dulled the senses, distorted the soul, and all that. But oh boy did it take the edge off. And Shinha had a lot of edges that needed to be smoothed, to be soothed. The new additions, the hopefully temporary additions, to her Naruto's entourage were people whom she could not find peace with. With the factory, she dealt with them enough to have an unkind opinion. They trespassed on sacred grounds without care and had met her spear for such transgression. They were like bugs, the moment she squashed one group, another will have taken their place by the next day. Their constant annoyance had impressed her with the idea that their only use was as impromptu compost, feeding the earth where she buried them. So as one of their leaders, that harbinger boy was outside of her good graces to start. Then there was Maeve. She'd grilled her, honestly, rushing to the depths of her mind to dredge up riddles and rhymes that only the most stalwart of adepti would have a response for. Maeve met her with practiced ease. If she was not an adeptus, then she was a trusted friend of the adepti at the least. That didn't mean Shinha trusted her. Not in the least. For as many truths as Maeve revealed about herself and her reasons for coming, she kept much more silent than Shinha could ever abide by. By the end, Naruto had formed a tentative camaraderie with her, but not even he, big heart that he was, granted her the same level of kindness he did with practically anyone else. That was enough for Shinha to be willing to strike her down the moment Naruto decided that she must be dealt with. The adepti be damned. Rex Lapis be damned. And Beta the worst of them all. A blowhard drunkard more focused on the bottle than any other matters at hand. Naruto seemed to actually like this one, so Shinha hated her all the more. Even now the wretch eyed him with the foulest type of intent. Shinha wanted her head for it, and she'd have it if Naruto wasn't so eager to stop her more murder-happy tendencies. She'd been invited to, forced to, that woman's ship, to finish the night of drinking. It was a part of the wager. Should Beidou have won, they'd leave the bar for the captain's cabin. The results of the duel, or more so how they came to them, were enough to make her blood boil and spear come to bear, but again, Naruto stopped her. He seemed intent to keep his promise of quelling her violence, and she didn't know how to feel about that. There were some people that just deserved death, weren't there? The whole of everything saw to it that she had polished off a bottle of sweet wine, a valberry mixture, on her own. After which, Naruto thought that she should walk it off, so she was accompanied by a shadow clone, a perfect doppelganger of her Naruto, as he saw the children home. For an imitation, the bunshin wasn't a pale one. She'd be confused as to who was whom, hadn't she not seen it appear in a puff of smoke. The walk did ease her. First, all the way out to Wolvendom to see Naruto's wolf child to his hut. Then to Lisa's apartment to see Naruto's fairy child to bed. Now only his fire child remained, and that saw them towards the innermost parts of Mondstadt. She hoped to find a seat soon. All the walking was starting to get to her, but more so she worried about what became of Naruto without her to safeguard him. Hey! She perked up as his voice called to her. She looked to see that his clone was staring at her, having stopped in his tracks. His fire child stared as well, hand in his, bouncing at her heels animatedly. What's it? She drawled in a manner that she did not enjoy, snapping at her brain to kickstart and make right the words she uttered. How unseemly. You okay? He seemed properly concerned now, which concerned her in turn. Why? She meant to say something like I'm fine, why are you asking? But some of her words failed her, and others came out much too slow. Just that you've been quiet since we've left the bar is all. Naruto grasped her hand then, willing her forward as he and his fire child kept towards where they were going. Thinking. She gave up on proper sentences. Ah. A sage's nod came from him then. He remained quiet then for a block or more before speaking again. You shouldn't worry. Wah. I the boss, we were not to be trifled with. He waved a hand, flailing for words before finding them. A goddess, or that's what everyone called her, she tried to screw with us. She suffered for it. Sealed her right up into the moon, I tell you. He grinned at her, pleased with his blasphemous deed, and she was, in turn, happy for him. She ruled all and could make and unmake time-space on a whim. Archons, well, with them ruling only one land and needing aid at that they're small by comparison. Ah. I see? Shinha didn't really. Her addled mind wasn't so good at connecting dots right now. What I mean, Ta say. He pulled her in close, arm looping at her waist. She pressed herself into him, finding comfort in the hold. Is that I'll follow my own beat, not theirs. They won't make me do anything I don't want to. And I'll not go anywhere I don't want to, and even if I did leave Mondstadt, you're welcome to come. Her heart fluttered as it hadn't since she was a girl. I am? Yup. He beamed, heedless of her racing pulse as they stumbled along. You can stay by my side as long as you want to, anywhere I go, in any way you want to. She looked up at him. Anyway? Anyway. Naruto gave her a determined nod that had her head spinning, thoughts emerging that she'd not at all be adverse to. They arrived at the spot whilst she was stuck in thought. Albedo. Naruto's fire child rushed to the side of this Albedo, who was making his way free of a massive building, the supposed headquarters to the Knights of Favonius. The sight of him made her do a double take between him and Naruto. Just how many children did he have already? Did you have fun? The fourth child of Naruto asked. The fire child chirped. Uncle and the aunties had a super secret talk. But I'm not supposed to tell you about it. And Paimon and Razor and I played goldfish while we waited. I see. Albedo nodded his head kindly to the fire child's ramblings. Uncle now? He and Naruto meet eyes and the boy passed on a smile. I would say that'd make you my uncle as well? Not you too. Naruto's arms flung up. Shinha felt the urge to pull at least one back down to her waist, but she held the instinct at bay as little Klee clambered up the steps. Be nice. Wave to the child. Smile. I jest, Albedo laughed as his charge clambered inside. I thank you for looking after Klee. She's less mischievous with people to hold her attention. No problem, the blonde barked a dry chuckle of his own. She's a joy to have. I'd wonder if you'll be saying that once she brings out the big bombs. A bead of sweat ran down his brow. She has bigger bombs. Only when her mother sends in special supplies, but you'd better be off. Albedo cast a glance over his shoulder then, as though expecting someone to materialize from the mists of the night. Jean did ask for us to alert her when the Lord Archon is next near. I think she wishes to give another meeting a try. For the love of... Naruto rolled his eyes at that, and Shinha's heart stilled a little. This Jean? Was she another annoyance to be dealt with? she'd taste her spear. No, down Shinha. Huh! She was starting to stop herself? Naruto's influence at work? Tell her my name is Naruto, and that if she and anyone else wants to speak, they'd best get used to calling me that, and only that. Obito granted him a nod. I see that she's informed. Thanks, Al. Also, let her know that when I'm ready, if I ever am ready, I'll send word by Lisa on where to meet. I'll see it done, Naruto. Take care. The two shared a warm goodbye after that, but Shinha couldn't care any less. Her mind was already spiraling downward. Naruto was planning to play nice with another woman? That wasn't good. What if she too fell for him? No, Naruto was unparalleled. There was no what if to it. She would fall for him as every woman before her, save Maeve, did. And what of other women that he would meet beyond this gene? How long would it take before a veritable army stood forth, all vying for his attention? Not long at all, Shinha's drunken mind gathered. It could not be. It must not be. Shinha? Yes? Her attention snapped forward and focused on Naruto. Let's go, he gave her a nudge. The others are waiting, or probably not, he amended with a rueful look. Beidou will drink the king's share if we don't make for port now. Oh, how she wished there weren't others, but she yielded, swathing herself in his embrace. Naruto. HM? He slowed his pace to turn to her, and she chose now, as it felt to be now or never. If liquor was liquid courage, then she needed at this moment. You, she swallowed once to comport herself, cursing her dry mouth. You said that I could stay by your side, in any way I so chose, right? Sure thing. He didn't hesitate, damn him. Not even a little. In any way you want to, for as long as you want. Well, Shinha whirled to the front of him with a grace ignorant to her drunken status. Her arms flowed up and looped behind his neck. And she flew up. Really, she'd been trying to pull him down, but he was too mighty of a man as to be dragged, even by one such as her. The results were as she wished them to be, all the same, his arms swooping out to support her. She took his lips and didn't favor letting go. He was at first stiff, but as she showed no attempt to break away, he began to return in kind. His head shifted to better accommodate her, lips parting to better take hers on. She felt a new type of daze come to take her, not wholly registering his tongue as it tangled with hers. To kiss him felt as to kiss fire, but Shinha let it burn her without trepidation. If it reduced her to ash, then she'd die happy. This fire, she knew now, was the only thing she could have ever wanted, in her blood, in her veins, on her chest, in her mouth, on her tongue. To the deeps of her soul, her lungs breathed in a fire. This flame that had come to her. It was one she hoped would stay. It lingered and roared on even as he pulled away. He was speechless at the end of it all, so she was the one to first speak. What if I chose this to be the way that I stay? His mouth opened. Closed. Opened again, and finally he found words. That'd be fine with me, actually. I'd like that a lot. Good. Joy joined flame and overwhelmed her, her vision blurred. Otherwise you'd meet my spee. Shinha tumbled to sleep there, falling to his shoulder. The last thing she saw as her consciousness bid fair was his brilliant, shining eyes and his warm and charming smile. She cheated. And it hadn't shamed Beidou, not one bit. She was a woman that knew what she liked, what she wanted, what she needed. And never once had she doubted herself. So when she'd been given the right to set the stakes, her decision was clear. She wanted him on her ship and for him to be shirtless as he offered. But the latter would be fulfilled by the assurance of the former. She'd been casual in her wink to Lisa, the rest probably saw it was a simple flirt, but the Electro Witch got what she meant and carried out their unspoken scheme flawlessly. When they'd begun to down the booze, a delicate mead, she'd been neck and neck with him. He was unused to the drink, and that much was certain. She'd seen enough inexperienced drinkers to pick one out when they'd be so close. But for all her experience, he had guts. She did too, mind you, but the man was on another level. He forced the sweet honey booze down his gullet with a determination more befitting the scene of a proper battle than anything else. But as they neared the finale, Lisa, the sweet thing that she was, swept in to warmly blow into Naruto's ear. She'd make the act so sensual that it even gave Beta pause, but for poor Naruto, the lad had fallen to pieces, coughing mid-chug and nearly spilling the contents of the pint. It was room enough for her to handily finish her own serving. Naturally, he demanded a 2 out of 3 and then a 3 out of 5. He'd won one round, Lisa having only managed an assist twice over before Shinha caught on. Neither electro user wanted the end of her spear, so they played fairly under the penalty of death. Hadn't mattered. Guts only went so far, and by the 4th pint, it was all Naruto had to keep his stomach in order. The pint was left half-finished. And for having to double and redouble the bet, she'd won a jacket and a shirt too. Naruto was the type to wear an undershirt, though, the bastard. Meh, it was a tight thing though, form-fitting, so not a total loss. And just as it bared down to swallow me whole, I struck, cut it right across its neck. Power and lightning coursed through my veins then, and off came the last of its heads. Beidou reclined on the arm of her couch, one of many in her cabin, her legs splayed across Naruto's own. She was comfy in his jacket, comfier still with him being trapped under her. When I next came to, I had this electro vision at my side. She showed them it then, a pretty purple orb embedded in gold, the symbol of electro glowing dimming off its glassy surface. How harrowing, Lisa giggled, both at the story and at Naruto's attempts to unlodge Beidou from him, but every time he shoved her thighs off his she'd just return anew. He made for too good of a rest to give up. It was becoming something of a game. To survive the wrath of a dragon, a hydra at that, for days on end. I suppose the gods showed their favor to you. Bah! Beidou waved her pint, away with the thought. The gods have a crappy way of showing favor, if that's the case. They grant visions to those who are already accomplished, and those that would have grasped this world by its horns without a vision. It feels more like throwing a bid in with a winning lot, not a real blessing. Can we not talk about them? Disgruntled and unafraid to show it, Naruto grumbled on. She batted her eyes at him. You say that as if you don't count amongst them? I don't. His reply came as a growl, anger burning in his eyes, and as the boat rocked more than a little bit, Beidou knew the cause to be the wind, just as she knew Naruto to be that wind. Yet for how obvious it was, for what Maeve had to say, for what everyone as it so seemed had to say, Naruto seemed to loathe the prospect, the core idea of it. Try as she might, Beidou couldn't peg why. For all that Naruto seemed to be, he held little darkness in him. It was there. No one was pure, and Beidou'd be damned before she believed as much. But even compared to the noble types that she found herself so often in the company of, Ningguang, Ganyu, Kazuha, Maeve, Naruto felt purer still. She had the knack for telling this sort of things, of shining a peering light into the darkness of the soul, had the eye for it ever since she'd gotten her vision a perk of the electro element perhaps. Yet the annoyance, the hatred, and the sorrow as well, that emerged when mentions of anything divine came about, drew forth all of Naruto's blacker feelings. It was unfocused, widespread, never for the person who so uttered the phrase, but towards the general existence of gods and any speak of them. None of that mattered though, not for this moment. Beidou found her concern drift towards the Alcor, currently in danger of capsizing should she not get this damned Archon to calm himself. Hey! Before she could say, do, anything, Lisa drew Naruto's attention, cupping his cheeks, flushed with anger and alcohol, and dragging him forth. She captured his lips, pulling him deeply into her. It frazzled him, his arms flying up unsure of where to go, but in time moved to land on the hips of the Electro Witch. As they fell deeply into each other, the boat calmed. The sight was so hot. Beidou wished that to be her. Taking up either spot would have been fine for her. But as soon as it started to steam, it ended, Lisa pulling away and Naruto following if only for a moment. You need to calm down. She said so in a whisper, urging rather than demanding, gentle over stern. I'm calm. He whispered back to her. She gave him a look that said many things, none of them being that she believed him. That's not what I meant, and you know it. He clicked his tongue and looked away. What would you have me do? People keep saying that you're a god. What of it? They're words. And I respond to them with words. Naruto bucked up. You respond to them with aggression. Lisa spoke as simply and calmly as ever, eyes trailing over the contours of Naruto's enraged visage. And what good does it do? Does it make you feel strong in control? Oh, she was frigid there. Even Beta felt cold. Tell me, is this who you really are? Quick to anger and threats of violence, if so that'd make you know better than the worst of them, the G. Don't say it. It came as a whisper, halting Lisa as hatred and rage and scowl melted away, leaving on a sorrowful frown marred to Naruto. I've not had good experiences with them, the gods. Obvious. Beta scoffed, taking in a glare from Lisa now. The librarian of Favonius probably thought her attempts as meaning to derail the conversation, but she only wanted to get her 2 cents past. What I mean to say is that it's clear that you have an issue with the whole god business. Just that, like why? She could have used her words better there. Pa! This is what she got for trying to help with emotional crap. Smooth. If underwhelmed was a person, it'd be Naruto right now. What I'm trying to say is that you're on a ship with 2 mature beauties that are giving you the time of day. If there's a time to talk, it's here, so talk. There. She worded that one a whole lot better, or so she thought. For Naruto, he just stared at her, and to Lisa and back to her. Seeing as neither woman made to say more, he just reclined into the couch. His hands braced her knees, a long-staying gust of air blowing from him. From the moment I was born, gods, and people calling themselves gods, they've made a mess of my life. Beidou quirked a brow. Lisa egged him on. And my father gave up his soul to a god of death so that he could save our village from a threat too big to bear. He winced even as he said the words. And not 12 years later that same god took the soul of my village's leader, one of the few people that gave a shit about me at that time at least. Well, damn. Beta could already see why contempt would form. Living sacrifices towards the gods were not something she'd ever get behind. If they'd be so omnipotent, then why did it cost a mortal life to show proof of that omnipotence? But he wasn't done. The next I heard anything of a god, it was after a mentor of mine, Jiraiya, was struck down by this god, all because he wanted me, my life. A hollow look flitted through his eyes, and she didn't like what she saw there. Thankfully it lasted only a moment before he rallied. He destroyed my home to get my response, and once he had his way and I saw him thrashed, he became all apologetic. A small, hoarse laugh bubbled out of him, either angry nor bitter. Just sad. He restored the lives of the people he killed, but not the old sage, and neither did he live long enough to help repair the destruction he caused my village. I forgive him for all he did, or I tried to, but I couldn't forget. Shit. Alright, this was getting a bit heavy for her liking. He was done now, right? Not by a long shot. And you'd think that'd be enough, yeah? Blue eyes met hers, flecked by green light. But even after all that, there was this pair of idiots that declared war on the whole damn world in a mad attempt to become gods and lord over everyone. This hole just went deeper still, didn't it? The worst part is that they won, they got their way, but only long enough for M to end up possessed by an actual goddess. He leaned back and gazed at the ceiling, idly tracing a circle on her thigh. Didn't even realize he was doing to her. And with her awakening, it was revealed that all of it, all the wars and conflict and bullshit that my world had dealt with for centuries, was all made through her and her underling keeping up conflict. All of it, a part of her plan to break free of confinement and take the world for herself. That is quite a bit, Lisa said, despair and worry in her gaze. Is that how you ended up here? Nah, he waved a hand, assuaging her. The bullshit that got me here happened just after we stopped her, and all that's for another time. But my point is that gods have never meant me any good. His hand continued its wayward path, drawing a shiver from her. And if there be a god out there, one that'd call themselves benevolent, I'd curse them more than the evil ones I've dealt with. Why would anything that call itself good allow such malicious gods to roam the world? Right, then. Time to Chan. I would have thought you'd take a liking to Barbatos then? What's that supposed to mean? Naruto gave Lisa a look of confusion. For the first time since they'd met, Beta found herself believing him to be from another place and time. Who in Teyvat didn't know the tale of Barbatos? Not he, apparently. Lisa was all too happy to give it. Barbatos was not the first god to rule over Mondstadt. That dishonor belongs to Dekarabian, the god of storms. He thought himself much beloved by the people of that age, giving them eternal peace. But that peace was achieved by entrapping the people in a barrier of storms, too thick and fierce for man or god to bypass. He forced the people to be content with the small paradise allowed to them, unable to see the world beyond the storms, unable to take in nature for themselves. Dekarabian was a foul one. Beta would be the first to say such. She hoped to never see a day where he made a return. It was said that even the sight of birds were foreign to the people. Unable to bear this, some stood up in revolt, aided by the smallest of wind spirits, who chose to stand beside mortals despite Dekarabian's terrible might. And on the day Dekarabian fell, that wind spirit stood forth to ascend into godhood, become the Archon we call Barbatos. It was all a tale that spread on winds to every corner of Teyvat. Barbatos' ode to freedom drew many a man's admiration, especially of sailors, who relied on his winds to uphold their own freedom. He did not become an Archon because he yearned for power or control, but so that he might protect Mondstadt from those who'd wish to take hold of it, people like Dekarabian. Yet he does so from afar, giving the people free rein to live their own lives. That's the reason why people are so sure of you being Barbatos. Sweeping in just as Storm Terror was about to claim so many lives and refusing the praise for your deed. She thumped his leg with a fist. That's exactly what Barbatos would do. Don't you see? Naruto looked away. I never knew. Lisa tilted her head. Had you ever bothered to ask? He winced. I know maybe I should be asking more questions. Maybe you should. That's swell, and all Betas saw no harm in the Barbatos worship. It should be expected of someone born to Mondstadt, but her view was just a bit too rose-tinted for her liking. But what's freedom when demanded of you by a god? And what do you mean by that? Oh, that edge on Lisa's voice was as sexy as it was threatening. She should word herself better or try to at all. Gods are flawed, I'd say. Now it was her turn to favor the ceiling with a long, lasting look. I'm not a devote or follower to any of them, so a god with a light hand is the only type I'd care to live under. But them vanishing off until they decide they're needed, that's just cruel. How long did the people of Mondstadt go enslaved before Barbatos chose to step in, all because it was people, themselves, doing the slaving instead of a god? His aid is too shallow, and you've got to admit that. For all the crap I could put to Rex Lapis his Adepti's feet, at least they're there. When nature nearly ended life in Liyue, they helped us. When famine would have taken us, they feed us. And when other gods tried to see Liyue sunk, they stopped them for us. They're a dubious group, those gods, and I frankly don't think they're much needed in every matter, but they are needed. A god whose own people can't recognize him feels more like he doesn't care at all, if anything. Then I think we'll just have to agree to disagree. Fine by me, Beta shrugged, not one to force her opinion on other people. If anything, she'd call Lisa's admiration for a god that didn't do too much of anything a good boon. It meant that she wouldn't be finding herself associated with another woman that constantly told her to get back to work. But on Naruto, and what about you, Loverba? What's your take? Naruto paused. Considered. Sighed. I think that I'm too drunk for this. Here, here. Beta cheered with a bottle of wine in hand. Huh, where'd that come from? Even she was left to wonder from where the booze materialized at times. She'd not complain though. Let's get back to the partying. She slipped her legs free of Naruto's, only for the sake of taking his waist instead, straddling his hips and stirring up a fluster from him. Her actions had the unfortunate mishap of shoving Lisa away from Naruto's side, but the woman would live. Beidou suffered such deep conversation about gods and the morality of their existence, so this much was owed to her. Get off! He shoved, but her grip remained firm. Don't worry, I'm clean. As much was true, she was no maiden of purity, and she'd not been much past her teens before having a taste of the flesh, so to say. But she didn't much sleep around. She knew what she wanted, sure, but that also meant that she didn't settle for just anyone. If anything, Naruto should be honored to be offered a place in her sheets. Wasn't every day she did something like this. That's not the problem. Oh, then what would that be then, Ria cherry boy? She leered, pressing her forehead to his. Saving yourself for someone special, maybe? That riled him up, just the way she liked them. It ain't that. Then prove it. She ducked down with a grin, nearing up on him, deciding that it was her time to see how an Archon tasted. But as she pinned him down, he inexplicably gave way. Smoke and air blew past her, leaving her with only Lisa's company. She looked around, but Naruto was nowhere in sight. The hell? Lisa giggled, finding enjoyment in her misery as it seemed. It does seem that we've been duped. Why'd she get the feeling that the only one to be duped was her? Hell? They all heard Beta's miserable cry from outside, sitting high up on the deck. It does seem that you've been found out. Maeve hummed as she sipped at her drink. Serves her right. Both of them, really. Imagine trying to cheat a ninja. Naruto returned, having seen the kids, and Shinha, to bed. On a whim he decided to see to the company of Maeve and Child. Beidou and Lisa were likely to try things, in their drunken states. So his two least favorite comrades actually proved a good distraction. It's not as difficult as you think, my friend, and check? Child declared as he moved his piece towards taking Maeve's queen, or maybe that was the king. He could only pick up so much from watching them play, particularly seeing as his mind was so unfocused by the mead and other matter. You speaking from experience? Naruto looked to the harbinger, while Maeve busied herself with studying the board. Well, the Fachi do have many business ventures, some of which see me to lands where the shadows have eyes, as you'd put it. Don't assume that I'd put anything anywhere. Naruto frowned, taking in the game anew. There. He pointed to a piece of Maeve's and trailed his finger along the path. Ah. Maeve nodded, quickly taking the piece and sending it on its merry way to victory. Checkmate. That's against the rules. Child's fuming about outside interference met a shrug from him. I don't follow rules. He wagged a finger. Ninja, remember? Humph. I don't want to play anymore. A shame, but I suppose that means you can return to your osmanthus quest. Maeve gave Child an expectant stare. Naruto was not under the illusion that she cared much about the wine, a faint waft of fermented osmanthus somewhere on the premises finding his nose. Too acute for a normal man's nose, but a man who normal, he felt that enough to be true. I'm going. Child made to dismount the ship. Once he was back to land, Maeve turned upon him as well. And shouldn't you be off to attend to your ladies? It wouldn't do for little Beidou to tear her own ship apart to find you. You talk like an old man, you know? So I'm told, but that brings to question, why spend time with this old man-like woman when young, wanting one so desire your attention more? Naruto regarded her for a time, saying nothing much at all, just staring at her. She stared back, her eyes, they were like an abyss. Just tryin' to figure you out. She laughed. Older and wiser have tried. He wouldn't admit defeat that easily. And did they succeed? I'll tell you when you're older and wiser. She gave him a smile, and it made him feel like a child. She had that air about her. An old man's disposition, even if she had the assets to say otherwise. Well, I'm off if you won't budge. He sighed, knowing full well that pissing off lightning users long enough would only lead to a fried rear. And they're not my ladies. He shot back even as he made his way down. You keep saying that, geez. Perhaps the god of denial will become your moniker? Leave it to her to get the parting shot. As if his murmuring was for himself, but Maeve was likely to have heard. But gods, huh? The memories of his clone bounced around in his mind. Lisa and Beidou each held their own opinions about the gods. As did Rosaria and Dialek and Shinha, Maeve, Jean, Kia, Paimon, maybe even Little Klee had something to say. He hadn't bothered to ask those he met about the gods, too wrapped up with convincing all that he was, definitely. Not one. When Beta asked him, his clone, about such thoughts at the end there, he really didn't have one. He hadn't bothered to form any. Caught up with his own opinions about who gods were, he didn't bother to wonder what they might mean for other people. But he said no, he supposed gods might be just as varied as humans were, that they could be capable of good, but he wouldn't know that for sure until he started to ask, and see, for himself. And should he see something he didn't like, should they prove themselves every bit the monsters he thought them to be, then these gods would go the way of Kaguya before them. That much was a promise. Right then, time to face the music. He reached the door and nudged it on him. So you've finally arrived. Lisa's eyes were on him the moment he entered the room. He crossed both arms behind his head with a chuckle. So you picked up that it wasn't me before? The little minx, of course, she had. I figured I'd play along. Her smile was full of dark promise as she crossed one leg over the other. That you'd reward me with something nice if I said nothing. She leaned forward then, and his mouth went dry. After all, if our own personal you is a punishment, then I'd love to see what you'd call a present. This woman. So you're back, Beidou, all dauntless and headstrong, stood and made her way to him, hips a-sway. Thought better than to miss out on all this, huh? Good lord, you could bounce a quarter off. No, focus. You know we just met, like, literally yesterday, right? That did nothing to stop the captain of the Crux fleet. If anything, it urged her forward at a quickened pace. As if she was trying to stop him from going up in smoke, which was valid. Your point? She pushed herself up against him, perky bust threatening to spill from her battle dress. He wondered if it was too late to go back to Lisa's apartment. Shinha would wake with a fury if she found that he left her. Paimon would likely have him face her paimonial wrath for leaving to deal with an enraged Adepti apprentice. But leaving now might prove difficult. My point? He coughed. Well, you hardly know me. I could be a demon sent to do all types of horrid things to you know? Well, are you? It wasn't until his back hit that wall that he realized that he'd been in retreat. Damn it all, the only demon here was her. Probably not. Good enough for me. Her arms went up to rest against the wall to either side of his head. Her knee came up and pushed to the wall as well. How cartoonish must they look? The woman was half a head shorter than him, but more than that, she was too close. And so it was official. If he wanted out, he'd have to fight his way through. He looked to Lisa, maybe she would. Nope. The sly sorcerer swirled a glass of some wine or another in hand, watching them with a yearning excitement in those emerald eyes. What was she? She's some type of voyeur. Last chance, Beta's lips brushed his ear, sending a shiver shooting down his spine. Come on. Don't you want to live a little? This close he could smell her, the faint scent of the sea whisked away with whiskey. It was intoxicating. Relax. Her lips ghosted across his neck. For once in your life, just let go. Screw it. His body exploded into motion. In the same instant his hands betrayed him. He took her by the hips, grabbing a fistful of her rear and all but and snatching her up, maybe because he wanted her so bad or maybe just to see if she was up to the task. Probably the booze talking. Really did wonders for his inhibitions. Beidou didn't prove herself wanting, hands lacing into his hair as their lips met, one leg twining against his to keep him from running away. Not that he would now. It was an experienced to say the least. With Shinha kissing her, it felt like a union, both of them guiding each other to greater heights of pleasure. With Lisa, he'd been in a daze, so he'd given her the lead, allowing her to take him where she chose. But for Beidou, it was much more of a battle. He liked it. Their weapons were their tongues, and neither felt content with yielding. His hands groped freely, and so did hers. He heard his shirt tear and retaliated in kind, ripping at the black fabric just above her breasts, exposing her full bosom to the night air. Even though he held her, she threw her weight around freely, mostly at him, leading them to twisting and turning, just so he would not tumble to the floor. A gust of wind swept up to keep him footed more than once, but eventually, they found themselves tumbling to one of the couches. He pinned her there, to which her legs locked him in place, fingers still gripping his hair, urging him to keep on, and so he did. For a moment, Naruto almost hesitated. Almost. Should they stop to catch a breath? What's wrong? Beidou cooed at him. Don't tell him you're chickening out, huh? Her words peaked into a gasp as he dipped down and kissed her bare breasts. Drunk or no, he wasn't about to put up with her teasing. No, this was much more preferable. He felt her hands fumble at his trousers, heard his belt buckle come undone. He kicked them aside with a grunt as Beidou lifted her skirt. And then Lisa's arms draped over him. Now, her breath brushed his ear, don't forget about me. The rest of their night soon descended into wild, vicious, maddening carnal bliss. So this part ends here. Alright, that's it for today's video, guys. Let me know in the comments section how was the story, and also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I will meet you in another video, bye bye.